Yep. Hi, guys. I'm Shane. I may or may not know some of you from my dim and distant infamous past. Right, Dave has asked me to talk about my RPG project. I don't know if how many of you have seen the thread on the forum. To be honest, there's really not that much to show at the moment, but I'll show you what I've got. So let me share my screen now. Right, here we go. Feel free to just stop me at any time to comment or whatever. Anyway, I'll give you a very short potted history of this game first. I wrote the first version of this when I was 13, 14, and subsequently an Archimedes version. I got to about 95% finished for both versions, and as somebody said earlier, the last 5% is the hardest. The Archimedes version was going to be published by Micropower before my university degree and got in the way, and Micropower went under. So, very briefly, what we've got at the moment is simply this: the ability to walk around the cityscape. I'm planning to use all 4 banks of sideways RAM. This is master only, by the way. So it uses all 4 banks and shadow RAM as well. Now, I've rewritten a lot of stuff that's already out there. So the sprite routines, for example, I mean, they will exist out there, but you know, I feel more comfortable using my own routines rather than taking somebody else's. I did that last time. I didn't really understand how they worked, and it's a lot better for me this way. There are a number of different routines to do specific things. So, for example, there's one separate routine that plots the graphics or plots the sprites to a temporary sprite, which is for the view. There's another that does the same thing and mirrors the sprite. There's another one that prints out sprites directly to the screen, and there's another one for the text. So there's a lot of duplication of code, a lot of redundancy out there. I haven't got around to optimizing yet. And as you can see, there's quite a noticeable pause when the arrows flick. That's the point where I'm pressing the keys, and there's quite a noticeable pause between pressing a direction key and the screen updating. The sprites are all run length encoded, and the decoding is integrated into the plot routine. So it decodes as it's printing, or as it's plotting rather. It's a fairly simple schema. It uses the top bits of a byte to indicate a non-repeated byte. So there's no inflating of sizes. Each tile set uncompressed is about 24K. They compress down to about 8K. So 2 tile sets will fit in one bank of sideways RAM. The plan is to use 3 banks for view graphics, and the 4th bank for all other in-game graphics like the font, the anything else that needs to be plotted, basically. I've also got a routine for loading to sideways RAM, which is basically an implementation of SR load, because the built-in version is quite slow. Apart from that, I mean, it's starting to look like I'm going to run out of memory already. I can fit in six sets of tiles, and that's about it. There's going to be probably no room for any animation, apart from which I'd have to draw all the animations, which is going to be quite time consuming, and the graphics are going to be quite time consuming in the first place. This is going to be one of those projects that gets gradually more and more ambitious as I go along. I mean, at this point, there's not really that much more to say about it. The structure of the program is that there will be 3 separate standalone programs, one for the city, one for dungeons, and one for wilderness, or cities rather. So they'll share data between them, and probably have to use a lot of overlays. The game logic itself will be mostly written in BASIC. I'm only calling out to assembler in wherever I need speed. The sprite routines are not fast. They're not. I wouldn't say they're slow, but they're not fast. And there's probably plenty of room for optimization there. What else is there to say? Oh yes, it's on a DFS disk at the moment, obviously, but I may switch that to ADFS just because I'm probably going to need the extra the extra number of files on the disk, plus the extra couple of 100K will be quite useful, because the limitation is going to be how much data can I fit onto a single disk. A lot of the graphics will be loaded on demand. So monsters, for example, there's probably going to be about 60 odd monster graphics, each of which will need to be loaded on demand, and it'll be more efficient if I can store those as separate files rather than trying to OSGBPB them. I haven't implemented any masking yet. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to do that, because that might. I was originally going to use the top bits to indicate a mask pixel, but obviously, if I'm going to compress them, that's not going to be possible. Because the left and right houses are mirrored, there are some slight anomalies. For example, the doors are always on the same side. So, hello, my internet connection might be dropping in and out. So, yeah. So as you can see, the houses, the doors are always on the right hand side of this particular house. There are also other minor ones, like houses magically flip around as you walk up to them. As you can see, the blue house on the over here is facing to the west, as it is the east. Sorry, and then if you walk around the corner, it magically flips around to point in that direction. But I'm just going to have to live with those. There's not enough. There's not enough memory to have all the different tile sets and have the houses pointing in 2 different directions. And that's it, more or less, that I've got to show for the moment. Yeah. Any comments and any feedback? Any suggestions would be welcome.
I think it looks great. have you tried packing the basic using advanced basic editor, which will reduce the size and give you more memory?
Haven't got that far yet. I mean, there's only a K's worth of basic there anyway. But with the amount of sort of combat logic and all the item logic and so forth, it's going to need overlays. There's no way I'll be able to fit it all in memory. At least not with everything I've got planned for it. You know, there may be I may have to cut out features as I go along, but that's the plan. That's based on what I did for the 80s version of this, going by my memory from 30 years ago.
Do you need all those tile sets loaded at once, the graphics?
Yes, well, all the tile sets for any particular, so all the tile sets that are going to be used in any particular dungeon level, for example, all the tile sets that are going to be used in a city. So this city uses. Yes, go on. Sorry.
So you can load about 4K a second off a floppy. So I don't know if that means.
Yeah. Well, the problem is, I mean, if you look at, I mean, just walking around here, that at any one time, all three types of different houses might be visible. So I can't really load those from disk.
I mean, it looks
on demand.
And I certainly
wouldn't worry about
the mirroring. It looks lovely, and I wouldn't worry about the mirroring.
Yeah, I mean, I played through Bard's Tale again recently, and you get that on Bard's Tale as well. So I'll live with that. The biggest concern at the moment is the speed of the view drawing, but I'm not sure how much faster I can get that.
I don't know. You were saying about masking, you probably weren't going to do it, but presumably you've got two bits that you're not using per byte anyway, haven't you? One for the one for your rung length encoding.
Yeah, at the moment, yeah. The masking, I haven't implemented the masking yet, but I will need to do that for Monster Graphics, which will be overlaid on the view that you're looking at. All the graphics, by the way, are drawn in GIMP, and I just because it can display oblong pixels correctly, and I just convert from BMP format to my sprite format. I've sort of copied how sprite areas work in RISC-OS, and I can have multiple sprite areas, and the sprites within each area are indexed. I mean, you know, this is going to be really basic stuff to most of you, but you know, I'm still shaking off 30 years worth of rust.
The file loading as well. You can load a sector with Oswald 7F. If you do end up putting in one big file, reading it a byte at a time, the other options are awful for speed, but you can read sectors fine. You just have to know where they are. Yes,
indeed. Indeed. I mean, the graphics might end up being stored in one big file, and I'll just have to index it and download the bit of it that I need at the time. I mean, there's still another two tile sets left to be used. Left to be drawn for cities, and each dungeon can potentially use a separate set of tiles. So one for your standard dungeon, sort of, you know, brick wall dungeon, maybe one for caves, that sort of thing. As I said, it's going to end up being quite ambitious, because I'm sort of kind of person looks at a game like Dungeon Master and think, oh, they've got that. I want that as well.
Yeah, I was shocked at how ambitious the gameplay sounds.
Yeah, I mean, I've stolen quite a lot of the graphics from Bard's Tale and Dungeon Master. I mean, I that's the elf girl is copied directly off redrawn from a Dungeon Master. No, from an Eye of the Beholder picture, actually. So, short and sweet, but that's unfortunately all the progress I've got to show at the moment. I mean, it's been it's pretty good progress for about a week's work on it, but it's slower than I would have liked.
How does it work with
sorry,
I was just going to ask, how does it work with the 4 characters then? Do you how do people play together, or the 4 separate characters?
No, you've got a party of characters that you create. I probably won't allow you to swap characters in and out as you during a single game. I haven't decided on that yet. But yes, you've got a party of 4 characters. I've got a fighter, a ranger, a bard, and a magician there. Sorry, Ringo didn't make the party there. And they're different stats, different equipment that they can that they can equip. Certain character classes can use spells. Your box standard sort of Dungeons and Dragons adventuring party.
It's very colourful.
That's one thing that's good. That's the only thing that's good about it at the moment.
Have you thought of seeking help from other artists, or is it something you want to do yourself, drawing all the art?
Yes, I mean, I know Tricky did offer to help with some of the graphics. Once I get to that stage, I will certainly need help with drawing everything. I just won't have the time to do it. Regarding animation, I would love to include animation, but like I said, I just don't think there's going to be enough space.
Yeah, it seems pretty tight already. I guess the other question is, if you're doing the main logic in BASIC, I mean, if you want to keep BASIC running, then you're always going to be limited to sort of how much RAM you can steal from a round system. So I'm guessing the game logic is going to be too complicated or onerous to translate easily into assembler.
Yes, yeah, that it probably could be, but I'm just not that competent, I'm afraid.
If you want to get it finished anytime soon, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
It also doesn't always save that much. Sometimes it costs you.
What was that? Sorry.
Converting
Sorry, I missed that.
Some things into assembler doesn't actually make them any smaller.
That's
yes,
true, yeah.
and to be honest, apart from that, there's not a huge amount of gain. I don't think from doing that. There's just it's complicated enough as it is. The idea will be at some point to release the designer tools for this as well, so other people can design their own adventures.
I should just chip in. I offered to help with the code. I can't put 2 pixels together and make them look right.
Maybe you could have some colour cycling in there for simple animation or something. It wouldn't use much CPU or anything, would it?
Yeah, possibly. I mean, my gut feeling is that the kind of images that they aren't the kind that lend themselves to color cycling animation. I mean, you know, if you've got if you've got a I don't know, for the sake of argument, the goblin on the screen, you really want, if you've ever played Eye of the Beholder, they sort of, you know, when they attack, they actually do an attack animation, and that would, if it was possible, that would be the kind of animation I'd like to have. But you know, at a rough guess, uncompressed, a monster graphic is going to take about 3.5K, and it's just, I mean, it would be feasible to have. Sorry, my laptop might run out of charge at some point. And you know, I mean, if there is enough room for it, then great. The other thing that I'm not planning to have at the moment is sound, just because I can't. You know, I have absolutely no composition talent whatsoever. I could listen to music, and that's it.
Sound effects, presumably.
Sorry?
Are you going to have sound effects?
Yes, I might do. I mean, sort of depends what it is, because the combat, a lot of the combat's going to be text-based, a la Bard's Tale, you know, Goblin hits you for 10 points of damage, etc., rather than graphical. And I think once you do that, at some point they're just going to become annoying.
Yeah, I guess it's a game you play for a long time, isn't it? So if you don't have a good selection, then yeah.
Well, I've got fond memories of sitting in front of Bard's Tale with graph paper and you know, laboriously mapping all the dungeons, and like I said, I wouldn't want to deprive anybody of that pleasure. And I originally wrote this because my friend had a PC and had Bard's Tale 2 on it, and I wanted, so I only had a BBC at the time, and I wanted something like that, and unfortunately we never got anything. We never even really got anything on the Archimedes. There was that Dungeons game by Fourth Dimension, but that was about it from memory. An Iron Lord, which was sort of a role-playing game.
Well, keep plugging away.
Yep, and I will certainly be mining the forum for help and particularly on optimizing all the code, and you know, and graphical help. It will be much appreciated. Plus, if anybody's got any features they'd like to see in it, I'm open to suggestions.
I was just thinking one thing would be a lot of work and would mess your run length encoding, but you could do a video Nuller version, so you get 16 colors of your choice.
Oh God, it's much easier to draw graphics with a limited palette.
I can believe.
And once you've got the whole spectrum to choose from, it's, you know, that just makes things a lot. Well, for me, it takes a lot longer.
Do you think you might be able to put a sky in there as well in the background? That could look quite good.
A sky?
Yeah, you know, instead of the blue, just the plain blue sort of.
The problem, I can do. The problem with that is that all these tiles are square, and therefore the red ground and the blue sky is actually part of the the tile.
I see. Yeah.
So I'd have to mask it, or I'd have to or to I don't know, replace the blue, the light blue with I don't know, black if it's night. But then the problem is, it would replace all the, all the windows would turn black and all the shading would turn black, which doesn't quite work. Unless I can come up with a clever way to mask and and code as well without sacrificing any of the compression.
You said the drawing of the screen was the slowest part. Do you have any idea sort of why or what's taking the time there?
It's, I mean, a lot of it is just down to, I guess, the amount of Mode 2, Mode 2 pixels that have to be drawn. Some of the logic, at the moment, the logic for actually deciding which tiles to draw is written in BASIC. Now, I can convert that to machine code, and that will speed things up a bit. But there's going to be, I'm going to have to put in some fairly clever logic to figure out which tiles to draw and which not to draw.
So it would seem he lost his connection.
I guess the battery died.
Yeah. I don't think it looked particularly slow.
Well, it's not a game where you run around in real time, is it?
No, definitely not.
It's a game you run around in real time, actually.
Hello?
Yep,
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry, my laptop ran out of charge, and so I'm on my desktop at the moment. But unfortunately, it doesn't have a camera on it, so I'm audio only now, I'm afraid.
We had a brief discussion where you were gone, and in my opinion, it doesn't look particularly slow. It kind of seems to suit the style of game that it is.
Yeah, and the fact that the routine, the graphic routines aren't, they're not. I haven't optimized the hell out of them. It's not the kind of game that particularly needs really fast graphics. So to a point, I can get away with it. I mean, of course, I'd like the graphics to be instant. Each view redraw to be instant, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
Is it? Sorry, because I came in a bit late. But is the whole thing written in BASIC, this game, or did you use bits of assembler?
For the sprite routine, for all the sprite routines, the text, the text plotting, that's all in assembler. But the actual game logic, as it were, is in BASIC.
I've noticed the legend nomenclature in the file name. Is that a hint towards a possible future name for the game, or?
Yes, my original game was called Legend.
Ah, right, I see.
That's so. This is the completion of a project I started 30 years ago. So yes.
Could you possibly bump it up to full screen so we can have a good
hang on.
look at those pixels?
There we go.
Thank God you didn't wait for a few years to do this.
Why is that?
I'm kidding. 30 years, that's a long time to pick up a project. Good job.
Well, you see, I mean, unfortunately, I lost all the code to my previous versions. Yeah. So I've got nothing to. I'm starting it from scratch. You know, Sarah thought putting her project down for 7 years was long.
Yeah,
What
that's
size did you
tough.
say the tiles were, pixel wise?
Sorry.
Pixel wise, what size are the tiles?
They vary in size. That I mean that house, for example, is one tile. But in fact, I'll show you the tiles. Where is it now? Bear with me. The tiles vary in size between about 16 pixels high to I think it's about 100 pixels, 100 odd pixels.
Ah.
So that's one complete tile set.
I was wondering if you had a little map in memory of what tiles you've already plotted, and whether things like parts of the ground and parts of the sky, you could just say, well, I've already plotted that tile before, so I don't need to plot it again.
Each tile is only plotted once for the for the block that's in that map location. What it wastes time on at the moment is that some tile it plots from the back towards you. So some tiles that are completely obscured by buildings in front of them are still drawn. I need to build in some logic to stop that from happening. That will save a little bit of time, but you know, but I don't know how much it will at the moment.
I think if you, I mean, it depends what the overlaps are, but I think that may well be if you want more performance, a good avenue to look down, because all you have to do, because your tiles are rectangular, all you have to do is have a look around the boundary of your tiles.
But you see quite a lot of the time, some of the tiles are only partially obscured. So if you look at the view at the moment, that tile there is only partially obscured by this one, so it still needs to be plotted. But what it does is it plots the whole tile and then overlays the other one on top of it.
Yes. Yeah.
So there could be some gain there by only plotting part of the tile that needs, you know, the part that's only the visible part. I'm not sure how I'd go about that at the moment, but that's another possibility.
Yeah, it becomes slightly trickier when you're trying to do decompression at the same time.
What does your inner loop look like in your sprite routine?
It looks like,
I mean, the description's fine, but obviously code's
it's all it does at the moment is it loads the byte to be plotted, and the inner loop only loads the byte to be plotted, and then plots it to memory, and then decrements the counter. sorry, there is also a check to see whether the repeat byte counter has run down to 0, and then if it has, it branches out to the routine that gets the next byte.
I was wondering if you could like decompress strip and then copy that to the screen, decompress the next strip, whatever size strip that happens to be.
Well,
may not save much.
You see, I wonder if that wouldn't actually be slower, because then you're decompressing, saving it to temporary memory, and then plotting that to the screen. Whereas at the moment, I'm just fetching the byte, doing the decompression calculation, as it were, and then writing the result to the screen or to the plot area.
Could you have a look at what the length byte is, and then jump to code depending upon that length byte?
You mean unbundling the loop? Yes,
well,
that's that's
but also because you know how much you're going to plot in there, you don't even have the loop. You just jump straight to a piece of code that goes blat 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 blat, because it knows it's going to do it 4 times.
Yeah, the other thing that the loop that the inner loop does is when it gets to a character boundary, it obviously because the sprites are stored in column-wise format, so it has the first column of pixels, then the second column of pixels, and so forth. Just because that's a lot easier to plot vertically, rather than storing in character cell format. So the inner loop, if I'm plotting over a character boundary, the inner loop just then adds whatever offset it needs to do to move down to the next line. Anybody any other comments or questions or suggestions?
You could possibly unroll it in character row chunks, so storing 8 bytes and mixing the decompression in with it, but make it a bit fiddly, quite a big routine.
Yeah, I mean, there's only at the moment there's only about 1.5K of not even that 1.25K of assembler in there, and I've still got most of main memory left to play with. So you know, a big routine is not necessarily an issue.
I guess the other thing is if you only run length encode it within 8 bytes, then you wouldn't have to worry about crossing a row boundary while you're reading compressed. Probably wouldn't cost too much.
Yeah, the reading isn't a problem. It's you know, when it's written, but
That's
because
right.
because it's plotting to a, I suppose because it's plotting to a temporary area, I could build all the logic to blitz the temporary to screen. I could make the plot area column wise, and then build all the logic to blitz it into the blitzing routine, because that will always know, or that will always be blitzing to the same location on screen. And that's an idea. That could be a bit faster.
What size screen is that? Is that full size, or is that?
What's that? The temporary draw area? No, it's only a quarter screen.
But a quarter of kind of
a mode 2 screen.
A quarter of 128. Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah. So 5K.
Page and a quarter wide.
Yes.
Page and a quarter. Yeah.
Yeah. So 80 by 128.
Is that what? I wonder if you can't draw your strips, if you can't kind of transpose it as you go from your temporary area to screen.
That's what I was thinking. So
Transposes it, but
so lay out the temporary area, so I don't need to worry about page boundaries, and then do the actual transposing as I blit it.
yeah,
Because it's always going to be blitted to the top left hand corner, so
Yeah.
I don't need to worry about calculating, page boundaries, character boundaries, and all that sort of thing. And that probably would be faster, actually. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, that can end up being quite a chunky routine, but
Well,
if you
I
do it in columns, so you do basically 2 columns, so it's a loop. Yeah, you can get it pretty fast.
yeah. If I'm not having to worry about that off the actual plot routine as well.
Yeah.
There's
Since you're
plenty
doing
of space in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's something to bear in mind.
And then you could make sure that you didn't your run length encoding didn't go past the end of a vertical stripe, so you wouldn't need to check have I got to the bottom of the 160 or whatever it is
Yeah.
inside that part of the loop.
Yeah, although with some of these graphics, obviously, like that one on the left, I tend to use a lot of dithering. So whereas other stuff at the moment, I only encode a maximum of 127 bytes anyway.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether that would I don't know how much that would affect the compression. I imagine probably not a lot.
It doesn't look like that one, for example, would wrap round from the bottom to the top anyway.
No.
For the next strip.
No, it's really only the ones with a large amount of black space.
Yeah. Well, it didn't seem too slow to me anyway, but since that's the sort of thing that
Yeah, I mean, I fired up Dungeon Master again, and yes, it is instantaneous. Although there is, it's not really instantaneous. There is a bit of a flicker, but we are talking about 2 megahertz master here.
Yeah.
The other thing is, I actually ended up using my sprite code is master only, because I ended up using excuse me, indirect addressing with that without the Y register, which I didn't realize was only available on the master's processor.
Yeah. Yeah, my decompression ends up having to keep X at 0 nearly all the time, because it's obviously using 1 for source and Y for dest, so it can.
Yeah, the other thing I'm trying to do is free up either the X or Y registers in my routine, because then, I mean, when at the moment, when I fetch the next byte, I write the byte to be plotted. I write both the counter and the byte to be plotted to 0 page. Then I load it again and write that to the screen memory. Now, if I could keep the byte to be plotted in in a register throughout the loop, I can save a couple of cycles per pixel.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like I say, this is all, I've it's hard enough at the moment. I spent about 3 hours last night debugging a missing clear carry. my sideways RAM loading routine.
Yeah, I know that feeling.
I'm not using any. I'm not using BeaveASM at the moment. I'm just typing the code into a text file, then compiling it on the emulator.
Okay.
It'd probably help if I did use BeaveASM, but I'll get around to that at some stage.
Yeah, we'll see how big it gets. I mean, you can, with BeaveASM on the PC, I can assemble one of my games, which is usually about 16K of code and data, then brute force, compress it, write out a text file full of EQUBs, and then include that in another BeaveASM thing, a 16K of whatever it's compressed to, 12K of data, to put a ROM header and a loader on it.
Yeah.
And spin up the editor and spin up an emulator, and that's about 1.5 seconds.
Yeah. Question: if anybody, I'm assuming somebody knows the answer. Which version of ADFS does the master come with? Is it the same version as the Electron?
I have the master just here. 1.5.
In other words, is it the one that needs the dummy file on it?
No.
Right. Okay. Okay. In which case, ADFS may be a better choice for me then. Somebody mentioned on the forum that it has a faster implementation of OS get byte put byte.
If you can just read and write 256 bytes and read write sector effectively, that will be much faster.
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry.
I really think that what you've got there is good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really do think that, and I think that whilst working towards getting faster updates to the screen is a good idea, I would concentrate more on getting some meat on the bones and getting a game, because
yes, indeed. Yeah.
I reckon most people would happily play that.
Very wise words, Simon.
Yes, I think the optimization of the sprite routines is for a much later date. There's enough to be getting on with just putting a game together at the moment. To be honest, I haven't even finished planning the character and combat systems, but the combat system is going to be more of a mix of sort of Japanese RPG rather than just pure traditional Dungeons and Dragons.
I mean, if you're prepared to share the code, I'm sure there'll be members on the forum who will look at your sprite code and be able to help at tweaking it.
Yes, I will do. I'm more than happy to share it. Like I said, the sprite routines probably already exist out there. Well, they definitely exist out there. I use the ones from the Creative Assembler book all those years ago, but I just prefer to use my own routines. But I'm more than happy to share that. Once I've got them down, they might even be useful to somebody.
I fully understand about using your own routines. Fully understand that.
I wouldn't want to embarrass myself with my coding at the moment, though.
No need to feel embarrassed. I've published my code, and that's awful.
I'm sure we all have that feeling.
I think you might want to have a chat with Flibble about JRPG combat systems. I think he's just about to try and put one of those into his game that he's doing.
Oh, right.
I think he's doing it in C, but I'm sure the principles and what would be, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of JRPGs, but so I'm not going to copy anybody's system. It's just But I'm going to base it on that, with different classes having special attacks and special abilities and whatnot. Yeah. So watch this space.
Okay, thanks Shane for that, and thanks everyone who's posted in chat and given so much input as well. And do check the chat out before we close it all down. It's been very busy throughout the talk. I'd just ask anyone who's on the forum, keep an eye on the new gaming development threads, and if you are able to give some input, there is already, I think, a build you can download for Shane.
Yes, that's a bit earlier than this one, but I'll upload the latest version and stick some code on, stick some of the assembler on there as well.
If people can give it a try and post some feedback. That's the thing; it's very hard to get feedback on new projects. I think also Andrew's recently posted another build of his moon-based escape adventure game, text adventure game, which he's massively improved now, massively expanded. So I think he could do with some feedback as well.